minus 10 minutes. Minus 9 minutes. Minus 8 minutes. minus 5 minutes. Minus for minutes. Minus 3 minutes. Minus 2 minutes. Minus 1 minute. Stand by.
How about that?
Hey, yo. Welcome to a brand new week, everybody. Same show, different location. It is the RP Show. Yours truly back in Florida. In a second, you'll see that. And we got a special treat for you today. Two of them, actually. Jersey Jim Biringer is going to be joining us from NHL Full Press in hour 2. And he can talk ball, y'all, as well. Because ball is for football. Ta-da! New studio, same place. South Florida, the place to be. The Moose is joining us from the Rectangle, the 306, where he's out broadcasting football, and we're ready to rock it for the next 2 hours. Moose, what do you like what I've done with the place, Moose? What do you think?
I love it. It looks great. Yeah, well done.
Okay. Well, thank you. You see the Vegas Golden Knights jersey here. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll be going to daily television in Las Vegas. I thought, let's just get it going early, the Golden Knights fans. All right, everybody, chime in. 902-518-3033, the text line, and also the YouTube chat. We're going to jump right into it with the Quick Six Show topics, Moose. The big story, we're opening with the NFL, and spoiler alert, I got some really good CFL stuff, Blue Jays, Connor McDavid, other football, because there's so much. But what did I say? Falls for football, week 1 in the NFL. I'm interested to get your take and all the viewers as well. Here are a couple of things that stood out to me from week 1. Josh Allen led Buffalo to 3 scores in the final 4 minutes. The last, a 32-yard field goal by Matt Prater as time expired, and the Bills rallied on Sunday Night Football to beat Baltimore 41-40. Just so you know, we played Deal or No Deal without you last week. The spread was 1.5 for the Bills. They didn't cover. Just so you know, they won by 1. Okay, and Aaron Rodgers turned back the clock. He threw 4 touchdowns for the Steelers and a 34-32 victory at the New York Jets. So let's just settle in, everybody. In his return, he won it, and I guess all turned out nice again if you're a fan of Aaron Rodgers. Those are just 2 things from a wild opening week in the National Football League. What did you see?
Aaron Rodgers was the early game I watched against Justin Fields and the Jets, and that was just a great, at least the first half was awesome. They went back and forth, putting up points. And at the end of that game, Aaron Rodgers said, I'm happy to beat everybody associated with the Jets. Everybody, to shove it down their throat. And you know what? It is good to see him playing well, whether you like Aaron Rodgers or not. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. And I can't tell you if it's going to have a happy ending or not a happy ending in Pittsburgh, but at least he didn't just go out with the last 2 years in New York. Whether you like him or hate him, you don't love to see that. So at least he's got this now. No matter what the season does, he can still at least put something together and play some good football. So that was kind of good to see. It was wild. I mean, the Bengals escaped from Cleveland with a big win, a narrow win where they didn't play very good in the second half. Cleveland was really scrappy. And can I say our Vegas Raiders now with a win in Pete Carroll's debut? That was nice too. So there's lots to get into from football, and that Sunday nighter was unbelievable.
This opening segment, by the way, is the shortest of hour 1. So we hit it fast with the big story. It's the NFL coming out of week 1, but I got a few things that I want to get to, Vegas related and all the rest. The poll question. Well, let me just back up. We got fans of all teams that want to talk about their team. So I get it. Like I was with Brent from Wellington, Florida yesterday, and his family watching NFL football. They're Packers fans, or at least Brent is. And they destroyed the Detroit Lions. There's a lot of games to unpack here. And I live in the Miami area, so I can't even tell you how. Like, my neighbor Fish, beside himself. He's wearing Miami Hurricanes gear today because he's done. People are burning Dolphins jerseys and all the rest. So the poll question today, the poll question for EMJ Marketing is, who's in the most trouble coming out of week 1? The Cowboys, which, trust me, I have some thoughts on that. The Dolphins, who got motorboated 33-8 in Indianapolis, or the Detroit Lions, who got smacked around and were never in that game against Green Bay, or is it somebody else? And I'll tell you right now, I think it's the Miami Dolphins, because that game at Indy was what they thought was a winnable game. Mike McDaniel, the head coach, had never lost a week 1 game. They were 3-0 going in there. Everything was coming up aces. And the Colts blew them out 33-8. I was listening to the radio broadcast. I told you that this morning. They're going off on there. 3 former Dolphins called the games, but Joe Rose is doing color. Kim Bocampers is on the sidelines in Indy saying, they're fighting on the sidelines, guys. It's horrible down here. And today they're talking about who's going to be the next coach of the Dolphins. I'm sorry, if you lose a winnable game like that, when you're not expected to have a great year anyways, it's the Dolphins for me.
You got to get your wins when you can get them, take them when you can get them. This was supposed to be one of those games against Daniel Jones and the Colts, who hadn't won a season opener in a decade. This was a game that, you needed to find a way to win, or at least be respectable. I think they're in the most trouble, but for a reason, I can say Detroit, just to give another game on the, vote for another game. Detroit, because they're a team that has massive expectations. At least in Miami, they're expected to be at the bottom of the division. So not a huge, drop off. But for the Detroit Lions in a really big game to play like that, it shows you how important those two coordinators were and what an adjustment that needs to be made. This is not going to be the same Detroit Lions team that we were used to the last 2 years, unfortunately.
Well, no, and that's part of the notes that I've got written down here. I'm sitting there watching this, and the Lions aren't cohesive as a group. And I'm like, well, they got new coordinators. But then I thought there are other teams that have new coordinators that won. So that's just an excuse you use if you lost. But I think we're centering on the Dolphins are in the biggest amount of problems here. Ryan in upstate New York writes in, he says, good day, Rod. Welcome home to the States, Reverend Rod. Thank you, Kev. Brian, it feels so good to be here. Kevin, the medium, checking in. He says, good morning, RP peeps. Happy Monday. Damn good to see Moose's face on the show. I appreciate him spending some time. I don't know how much we're going to have Moose this week. You're traveling, you're calling football. And for those that are just showing up and getting settled here, we're opening with the big story. It's week 1 in the NFL. Coming up after the break, we'll look at week 14 in the Canadian Football League. I do want to talk about Connor McDavid. As a matter of fact, I have some scintillating hockey stuff. I mean, I get tingles thinking about it, okay? That you have no idea. I should text you in the break to prepare you. Rich in Edmonton writes that he says, the Elks win, Raiders win, and I booked for Maui in January. A damn good weekend. It's fantastic here, too. Thank you for pointing that out. Rob in Las Vegas writes in, he says, the Bills-Ravens game was wild last night. At the end, my wife turns to me and says, that game reminded me of a CFL game. Right? No, I thought there's no way the Bills are going to come back and win this, but they did. So there's a lot to get to. 902-518-3033, and that is the text line brought to you by Western Dodge. Hour 1 brought to you in part by the Mad Greek. Whether it's pizza, ribs, or authentic Greek favorites, make it the Mad Greek Eatery tonight, open until 11 p.m. Order online, pick up, or dine in. Check out their menu at themadgreekeatery.com. As I said, Moose, my neighbor Fish is beside himself with the state of the Dolphins. They're talking about who's going to coach this team next. Is it going to be Belichick? Is it going to be Ryan Day? Is it going to be that's what's going on here. South Florida is burning. We'll be back with CFL talk right after this.
This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw-up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Looking for a new ride without the big city pressure? Come to Western Dodge in Moose Jaw, where you'll find an unbeatable lineup of Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Dodge Muscle, and Chrysler family rides. With knowledgeable staff, great prices, and that friendly Moose Jaw touch, you'll drive away with confidence. Western Dodge. Big selection, small town service. Visit us today or browse online at westerndodge.ca.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too.
Al-Anon and
Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Ultimate Fan Zone, taking our show on the road coast to coast. Shop online, ultimatefanzone.ca. Slick, user-friendly. We built this site for the die-hard sports fans. Jerseys, hats, team apparel, offering officially licensed fan gear from the best lines in sports. Nike, New Era, Adidas, Fanatics. Game day ready to your door. Now, just a click away. ultimatefanzone.ca or check us out on Facebook and Instagram. UFZ Downtown Moose Jaw, home of everything authentic.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Famoso, Italian pizzeria and bar. Taste, savor, share. Famoso, the spirit of Italian. Come in, enjoy.
Nazareth's Canadian Farewell Tour is coming to Moose Jaw. Live at Temple Garden Center, October 17th. With special guest, Lee Aaron. Tickets on sale now at Temple Garden Center box office or sasktix.ca.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the RP Show. Your boy's back in South Florida with some new designs here, but happy to be here. Same crew otherwise, producer Corey and the Moose is with us. Everybody seems to be in a pretty good mood today, Moose, from the viewership, unless your team lost, of course. Ryan in upstate New York writes in and he says, that loss to Rogers was tough to swallow. I really wanted the Jets to win that game to start the Aaron Glenn era on a positive. On to Buffalo. Shai writes in and he says, morning, Rodaholics. I'll take it. Could be worse. And yeah, Scott in Vancouver writes in, he says, Belichick in Miami would be awesome. For those that just joined us, they're already talking about who the next coach of the Dolphins will be. But we're moving on. The Jug, Darren, the Jug is watching in Saskatoon, and he says, how would Coach Miller say it? Good morning, Riders. Lots of media didn't pick the Riders to win. Well, on cue, we switched to the Canadian Football League. 3 of the 4 games this weekend would typify as upsets. The underdogs won. Friday night, Ottawa beat BC 34-33 in a comeback. On Saturday, Hamilton beat Montreal 26-9. Saskatchewan had their way with the Bombers in the Banjo Bowl 21-13. And Edmonton upset Calgary 31-19. The only non-upset was Hamilton winning. What was your take on CFL ball in Week 14?
Yeah, the CFL just continues to be, exciting and somewhat wild and all the rest. You mentioned the upsets, and people would look at the Riders winning and say, how's that an upset? They're in first place. They're at the top of the league. They're in all the rest. And it's it's so hard to win those back-to-back games against your rivals. When you look at Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, the Bombers had won, 7 in a row, I believe, Banjo Bowls. So it's tough. But they went in and played really good football, played clean football. Tavon Campbell has put together a pretty remarkable 2 weeks for the Riders in that secondary. I remember doing the Rams banquet with him 2 banquets ago now. It was a year ago in April. And he's coming back now to the Riders and playing really well. What a great 2 weekends to kind of put his stamp, kind of his coming out party, if you will. Pretty awesome. And then Edmonton, very much in the mix in the West, setting up a really, it's not quite the stretch run yet, but a wild second half to the season here.
Well, there's a tie for the 4th spot in the West with 5 wins. Edmonton and BC, the crossover is in play as we go into Week 15. By the way, what they say from the broadcasting network in Las Vegas is they love the interactive portion of this program. Game Plus has said that forever, our longtime television partner in Canada and 32 U.S. states. So I'm writing this. Paula Dupont writes in, do you know Paula Dupont? The name sounds, do you know Paula Dupont?
No, I'd have to check the family tree. No.
9, you can't BS a BSer. Paula Dupont writes in, that's Darren's mom, on the text line, 902-518-3033. She goes, good morning, my favorite show with my favorite and second favorite broadcasters. Great day. You'll take that up with your mom, Darren, that you're her second favorite
number
broadcaster.
2?
Yeah, exactly. You take that up with her. Kirk writes in from Toronto, 902-518-3033. Says, hi, Rod. Argos, Ticats, Bills, Ravens, 2 games played within a 2-hour drive of each other within the same week and had the same dramatic ending. How about that? Well, that was a good point. Were you watching the Sunday nighter? I didn't think there was any way that the Bills were going to come back and win that thing, but you had to be hanging into the end. That was the best game in week 1 in the NFL, wouldn't you say?
It was. And I don't think, you'd have much argument on that. I mean, outside of your favorite team. But what's crazy about that game in it is that, we look at that as an AFC championship preview, and one of these two teams probably deserves to go to the Super Bowl. Both teams trying to break through. The Bills have had more success in the playoffs than the Ravens have, but that's not saying a lot because they both haven't been able to break through and get to a Super Bowl. But every time Buffalo would come down the field, they weren't playing bad. They would come down and score, and then all of a sudden the Ravens would come right back and score themselves. And then something clicked at the end of that game. Buffalo needed to get those back-to-back scores. They used the timeouts. They saved them. How crucial that ended up being in the last minute of the football game. And then to come back and kick the game-winning field goal. Just back and forth drama. And what a way to cap off the week, even though we still have the Monday Nighter.
Yeah, well, Vikings-Bears tonight, which, by the way, the Vikings are favored by 1.5 on the road in Chicago. I got so many things I want to get to. I'm so excited to see you. Everybody's excited. For those that have just logged in, I'm back in South Florida, and my heart is very warm because I had a lot of great friends writing saying, glad to have you back. And they were Panthers fans. They were 12-step friends. They were neighborhood friends. It just felt really good. I had a wonderful summer in Canada, but it is nice and very warm here in South Florida. I like it. Waiting for you to come visit again, Moose. The invitation is open, as you know. Here's one, and we're going to go back and forth between CFL and NFL. Brent from Wellington, Florida writes in. He says, Moose, feel free to break up the cheese head, and all you need is love. Shirt. Go Pack. I think that's what I want to ask you and all the viewers is, what are the overreactions? For those that just logged on, the poll question is, who's in the biggest amount of trouble? Cowboys, Dolphins, Lions, or other? Because Green Bay mauled Detroit in that game. I'm thinking of the actual blowouts. It wasn't like week 2 in the college, which we're going to get to that later. That was some not very good games in college football this weekend. Plus, we'll get to your Canada West action. But what are the overreactions? Like, are they overreacting in Miami that they're already dusting off the nameplate of Belichick for the Dolphins head coaching job? Like they're done here with Mike McDaniel and, quite frankly, the GM Chris Greer, and we're 1 week in. That's the biggest one. But are there others?
That is an overreaction. I don't know that that's a big overreaction. I think they have a right and a real reason to worry in Miami. That's not an overreaction. I think it's an overreaction to think that the Lions are done and that the Packers are that much better than the Lions. That's an overreaction. Detroit's a very good football team, and they'll get this figured out. They didn't just become a bad football team overnight, so that's an overreaction for sure. Probably an overreaction the other way to think that Aaron Rodgers is going to lead the Steelers to the Super Bowl. That might be a bit of an overreaction, even though they looked really good in week 1. He's probably not necessarily an MVP, somebody you need to look at as an MVP frontrunner. But those were some of the overreactions. I'm trying to think of what some of the others might be, but that's a place to start.
They'll come to you. And so let's just all settle in. We got so much to get to here on this Monday, episode number 1571 of your favorite daytime sports talk show. Brent in Wellington, Florida says, Micah Parsons had an immediate impact. And I was watching the game with Brent, and I'm sitting here thinking about the Dallas Cowboys. And as Jim Barker said on Friday's show, Micah Parsons won the Micah Parsons trade. Okay, not the Cowboys, not the Packers. Micah Parsons did. He did have a huge impact in the game. And to be honest, before I slip back, for all of those that want to talk about Milt Stiegel's overreaction, they're saying, in his comment on Zach Caleros, I just want to examine the Cowboys for a second. I put them in the poll because they're my team. But Darren, everybody, you don't see it because you're not Cowboys fans. I want your take on this. The quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys should not be spitting at or in the direction of any visiting player. Okay. And then CeeDee Lamb drops 3 passes, 2.5 in the second half. Okay. In a winnable game for Dallas. These are your leaders. These are your highest paid players. So do you see why, as a Cowboys fan, I'm sitting back? We all talk about a broken culture. Dak spitting, which he was the first spitter. Jalen Carter ends up being the second spitter in the incident. And CeeDee Lamb's drops. It's not funny. Okay. So you can, they should have won in Philadelphia, but they didn't. And it was because of dumb things. Like, do you see the cracks in the foundation of the Cowboys culture as I do? Because it's plain as a day to me.
Well, we've seen them for a while, that this just isn't quite, that it's missing. But that was something else I was going to, bring up in the overreactions. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys are broken without Micah Parsons, or it's not as big of a hole as people have made it out to be. I think that's a bit of an overreaction. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys are in a bad spot. I actually liked a lot of what we saw from them on the Thursday nighter. I thought Dak was aggressive. I thought he was, he looks healthy finally. Looks like he was throwing the ball well, but there are still those mistakes. The spitting thing, that's a mental error. That's a culture thing that can't happen. The drops, those are reasons why you lost. If you don't clean those up, you're still going to lose football games. But what we did see was that the Cowboys have enough talent, can run the football. Dak's playing well, the defense okay, that they can win some football games and be a playoff team. But they got to clean up all these little mistakes.
Okay, so B Mans checks in and says, can you imagine Troy Aikman spitting on someone? Agree, Rod. And Scott in Vancouver says, Dak wasn't the one who spit, was he? I didn't see the first one. Yes, he did, and that's the point. It's not you guys' fault, but you're not a Cowboys fan, so we're into it, okay? So Dak spat in the direction of Jalen Carter, and that's what instigated Carter spitting at him. But you wouldn't know that unless you were really following it. That's all. John Ohm writes in, from Winnipeg. He says, did anyone hear Milt Stiegel's comment about Zach Caleros? Holy overreaction, Rod. Now, here's me asking for NFL reactions, but we have a lot of CFL fans watching here, too. Zach Caleros got knocked out of the Banjo Bowl Saturday. Didn't finish the game, and that's the quarterback for Winnipeg. For those that don't know, the analyst on TSN, Milt Stiegel, saying he should never play again. And I'm actually glad you brought that up, John, because my take on that, when I saw Milt say that, and by the way, I didn't watch much of the game. I was traveling all day Saturday. It doesn't matter what Milt says. And we're in the hot take business, okay? I love Milt. He loves me. We're good with that. But just because Milt says Zach Caleros should shut it down, people have been telling him for 6 years he should shut it down. He's not listening. Matt Dunnigan called Dave Dickinson 20 years ago and said, you need to shut it down, bro. You're going to be eating from a straw. You're going to be in a wheelchair pushing your kids around, or whatever. The kids are going to be pushing you around in a wheelchair. They don't listen. So it doesn't matter what Milt says. Zach is going to play like every other quarterback until they pull him off the field and tell him you're done. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it feels like we have kind of put this to rest for a while, and now it's resurfaced again. Coming out of the time in Saskatchewan and going from Saskatchewan to Winnipeg, it was a hot topic, and then it goes away. And I feel like in this situation, if he comes back healthy and then, avoids the major hits and avoids the major issues, we're going to not talk about it again, and he's going to be fine. I think, it's up to Zach. We said that all along. I think that's the case. It's going to be up to Zach. I think he needs to be, every time this happens, it's just a reminder, and it makes you think, is this something I want to continue to do? And only he knows, coming out of this one, coming out of the last one, the one before that, how he feels. If he knows he's feeling worse coming out of them from one to the next, then he's going to already be telling himself that, okay, maybe it's getting worse every time. I got to think about stopping. But if it's not, and he's actually getting healthy again and he feels okay, then he'll play. But this is so complicated and complex, and only he knows.
And Scott in Vancouver says, so Zach is another Tua. Yeah, he's the Tua of the Canadian Football League, yet he's won 2 Grey Cups and is going to the Hall of Fame. Regarding the Cowboys, Brent in Florida says, cracks in the foundation. Damn, they should evacuate the building before it completely collapses. No, I know. I'm trying to be gracious. It's bad in Dallas. Oh, we almost won in Philadelphia. I hate that. We almost won. There's a lot more to it than that. Wayne in BC says Milt did clarify that if Zach has another concussion, then he should not play anymore. In neither case does it matter. It'll be up to Zach. John Ohm says exactly, Rod. Perfect analysis. I agree with Rod and Moose. By the way, I love Milt Stegall. That's the thing. We all say these outlandish things to get clicks and the memes, and that's exactly what happened for Milt. But it doesn't matter what Milt thinks. Doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what Zach thinks and his wife and his family, quite frankly. Now, when we come back, I have some absolute, I'm telling you, I'm not joking, Darren, scintillating. Here's the thing. It's NHL goalie week, and they started it off with a banger. What's the greatest goaltender tandem in NHL history? Number 1 and number 2, or 1A and 1B. Think about that, because I already have the answer. It flashed in my head, and I credit God for that. God gave me the answer for the greatest NHL goalie duo tandem ever. We'll be right back with that and more right after this.
Country's hottest party is coming. James Barker Band, Bud Light Buckle Up Tour 2025. Live across Canada with special guests Ryan and Rory. November 20th, Temple Garden Center. Tickets on sale now at Temple Garden Center box office or online at sasktix.ca. James Barker Band Live.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with The Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is, you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more, there's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Famoso, Italian pizzeria and bar. Taste, savor, share. Famoso, the spirit of Italian. Come in, enjoy.
Business owners and marketers. Okay, we know you think we're pretty cool. That's why we want you to share in the coolness factor. Partner with the Rod Pedersen Show and market your business every weekday to sports lovers just like yourself. Take advantage of our many cost-effective commercial and promotional opportunities. Tell the world about your business. Yes, the world. Thanks to Game Plus TV and the Rod Pedersen Digital Network. Contact us today and find out how you can be a part of Canada's fastest growing sports talk show, The Rod Pedersen Show.
Hiring a video company shouldn't be complicated. Click, pay, done. Skycron.com/Regina. This is a test pattern. This is what happens when your video company screws up. You don't want your clients to see a screw up. Hire a company that only does video, so it won't screw up. Then, people who give you money will see less of these and more of you. Skycron.com/live.
Sports fans, daytime sports talk gets a whole lot better weekdays at noon Eastern with The Rod Pedersen Show. Talking sports daily with A-list guests, and the best part is, you can always join the discussion as we're the most interactive talk show on television. Broadcasting from coast to coast from the biggest events like Super Bowl, Stanley Cup Final, Grey Cup, and more, there's nothing like it in the game today. The Rod Pedersen Show, daily at noon Eastern and 10 p.m. Pacific on Game Plus Network.
Hour one brought to you in part by Outlaw Communications, where creativity is a way of life, specializing in strategic communications, leadership training, and clear conversational content that motivates your audience. Check them out, Outlaw Communications. Jeremy Davis writes in, Moose, I think you know him, on the text line 902-518-3033. He knows you so well that he only refers to you as Darren. Jeremy in the Game Plus control room says, hi from the control room. Great seeing Darren back. Everybody loves you, Darren. Laverne, none more than me, other than maybe your mom. Laverne in Swift Current writes in with a photo of Ken Dryden, and he says, rest in peace, Mr. Ken Dryden. I'm interested in how you took Saturday's news that the iconic Ken Dryden, Montreal Canadiens goalie, passing away, 6-time Stanley Cup champion at the age of 78 after cancer battle, because it rocked me. But he's way before your time. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, definitely one of the first legends of the game, though, that I was introduced to. So it definitely was a moment of like, it hit me a little bit. Not like it would have hit you. It wasn't one of my hockey heroes or anything. But everybody talks about the book, right? And that was the first hockey book that I read in elementary school. Picked it up on the shelf. It was way too over my head at that point. Maybe I actually read it in Maybe I actually read it in high school. But yeah, that was the first real hockey book. And I love those biography type books now, read them all the time. But yeah, a tough day for sure, because he's an icon and one of the first ones I remember.
Well, let me just get on track in a sec. I'll say, because you saw my tweet, Ken Dryden's the reason I was a goalie. And one of the things that's adorning my set here is my dad's goalie mask, as you see. Got that from my brother just before I left Canada this summer. It's a fiberglass mask that my dad wore, had that made in the 60s. I began playing goal in the 70s because of Ken Dryden. He was my guy, and then my dad forbid me from cheering for Montreal. It's a story for another time, but I never stopped loving Ken Dryden. Okay, so the reason I played goal, Ken Dryden passed away. So it got me. I never met the man, but I've heard nothing but great things about him. Ken Dryden, as I wrote in my 10 things column, a great guy to emulate on and off the ice. Back on point. Just point 3, the Toronto Blue Jays will have Monday off to prepare for a 3-game series against the visiting Houston Astros that begins Tuesday. The Jays won one of 3 games against the Yankees in New York and lead the AL East by just 2 games over the Bronx Bombers. There's your obligatory Jays mention, because fall is for football, and go Jays go. But there are other things that I would like to discuss. I'm going to get to Connor McDavid here in a second. But so the NHL best goaltender tandem. When I saw the release from the NHL announcing this was NHL goalie week, I got tingles. And they came out Monday with a banger. Who's the best tandem of all time? And to be honest, Rich from Edmonton